Welcome to Myanmar Musings, a podcast of the Myanmar Research Centre at the Australian National University, Canberra. I'm Luke Corbin. It is Saturday, the 24th of July, and today we're bringing you a recording of a seminar held last week at the ANU Myanmar Research Centre's Myanmar Update 2021 conference. This 20-minute talk is called New Friends, Old Enemies: Politics of Ethnic Armed Organisations After the Coup, by our speaker Salai Samuel Hmung, a recent graduate of a master's program here at the Australian National University. After Samuel's talk, he answers two questions before the podcast concludes. Handing over now to Dr. Nick Cheeseman, who convened Samuel's panel.
We have as our next speaker Salai Samuel Hmung. Samuel has recently, last year, completed a Master's in Political Science at the Australian National University. He wrote a really fantastic thesis on power sharing arrangements. In the course of doing that work also became involved in one of the projects of the Department of Political and Social Change, the Southeast Asia Rules-Based Order project. And I get the impression from the title of this paper that the topic that he's going to speak to today will build on the really good research that he did over the course of the last year as part of both of those activities, as well as addressing topics of current concern. And the title of the piece is New Friends, Old Enemies: Politics of Ethnic Armed Organizations After the Coup.
Thank you, Nick, for the introduction. And so I did a research on the position of the ethnic armed groups, also known as Ethnic Armed Organization, EAO, 3 months after the coups. So this research was conducted as part of the SIBO project, supporting the rule-based order in South Asia of the ANU Korabel School in last May, and it is also available on New Mandela page. My presentation will be divided into 3 parts. The first part, I will explain briefly on the alliance and coalition of ethnic armed groups before the coup and their relation with the military, the turmoil. And in the second part, I will explain the framework that I use for my analysis, and which is followed by the third part, and where I present my finding and implication of the paper. Yeah, I want to have notes about the presentation is that I used that original data, I used the data within the 100 days before the coup. However, for this presentation, I include some of the most recent development currently happening in the country and clarification about the group name. Many of the ethnic armed groups, they have 2 names. One is for political body and one is for military body. For example, KNU, Korean National Union, it is political names, and Korean National Liberation Army, which is military name. But for my paper, I use their commonly known name throughout my presentation. For example, I keep using KNU instead of KNLA. So this paper explores whether the coups had brought this group closer against their common enemy, which is the military, or deepen their disunity and after the coups. Another question is the likelihood of the formation of the federal army. In order to map their position, I collect and analyze their public statement on the coup and the anti-coup movement, which is made out of 3 protests: the civil disobedience movement and the CRPH committee representing Pidang Suluto and the National Unity Government, NUG. So I also examine the EAO activity and engagement with the military in the first 100 days after the coup, which began on February 1st. As you can see, we have many armed groups, 18 armed groups. Actually, we have more than that, more than 20, of course, but some of the groups are fighting. So for example, like Naga group, they are fighting India, so I didn't include in this paper. So I focus mainly on those armed groups fighting against the military or fought against the military. So this 18 group can be divided into 2 categories: those that signed the nationwide ceasefire agreement, NCA, in 2015, and 2 groups joined the NCA agreement in 2018, and those that did not sign the NCA agreements. So these 18 groups have a range of strength and influence. Some have very strong armed force with thousands of troops and very advanced weapons For example, like UWSA, United White States Army. So they have like 30,000 armed troops, but some of the group, they don't have much. They only have like 50 or 100 armed troops. Some function as the de facto government. For example, like KNU, KIA, they function as a de facto government in their region, and they have a very well-structured civil administration throughout their vast control area in the frontier in their ethnic states. Some group are even labeled as very small, and they are even labeled as non-governmental organization. Some of them, the group have a very long history. They have been fighting the military since 1948. Some been fighting since 1960 after the military coup in 1960. Some just start carry out their attack against the military only after the partial restoration of representative democracy in 2011. So 10 groups that signed the NCA agreement, they form a peace process steering team in 2015, and 2 groups, Moon Party, Numo and MSP, and Lahu, they joined in 2018. And there is other 7 groups they didn't sign, or they have been refused to sign the NCA. They form FPNCC, Federal Political Negotiation Consultative Committee, in 2016. And there is one group, KNPP, Karenni National Progressive Party, which is based in Karen State, Kaya State. They didn't join FPNCC or PPSD. So 9 of the PPSD members, they are based, 9 of the 10 groups are based in the Thai-Myanmar border, and only the CNF, they based in the western part of the country, which is in Chin State. And in accordance with the NCA enrollment, the PPSD groups, they convene for peace conference, which is known as Union Peace Conference, 21st Century Pen Law, in collaboration with the U Thein Sein government and also the NLD government after 2015 and Tamro over the past 5 years, and they agree some Union Accord or Pidangsu Accord, which cover work plan principle to implement the NCA agreements. They have a formal negotiation with the government and military after the signing of the NCA, but they have some strained relation during that 5 period. So 7 of the FPNCC, they are quite significant because they make out of 70% of the armed forces in the country, except for Arakan Army, which now based in the Arakan state. All of the groups are based along in Myanmar-China border in Kachin and Shan state. And they call for the constitutional reform and a new peace deal beyond the confine of the NCA agreements. Therefore, the Tamro, they have never acknowledged the existence of the FPNCC, and they never held a group meeting under the FPNCC name, despite they have some informal meeting with each of the members. So Northern Alliance, you will in the red, written in the red letter. So they've been formed in 2016 and led by the KIA, and they are extremely powerful, and they have waged several deadly joint attack and offensive against the military, including the one against the police outpost and Tamro Technological University in Mandalay region, which is also known as the military town. So they are very powerful groups. For my analysis, I use 2-dimension framework, which is a political dimension and military dimension. The main question for the political dimension is whether this group EAO publicly contain the military group, or whether they endorse the CRPH or NUG, whether they held a meeting with the military delegate after the coups. And for the military dimension, there's 2 major questions. One is whether they have ongoing clash with the military. If they have it, is it a major, which is offensive happen daily or weekly and airstrike? And another one is, do they have a minor? Is the conflict is minor? They have tension and infrequent clashes in their control area. So my findings suggest that so this one is the political dimension on the vertical, and military is on the horizontal. So we can see four different kind of group positioned there. Four category. One is a group fighting fiercely with the military on a daily basis, like KIA, KNU, on the corner, top corner. And there's also a group reluctant to confront enemy, which is the military, which is far more powerful than they are. Like many of the PPSD member on the corner, top corner. And there is also a group seeing the opportunity, the coup as an opportunity to boost their image and to extend their influence in their control area, which is like many of the Northern Alliance, like AA, MDA, GNLA. And there are also groups that are strategically silent to maintain the status quo after the coup, like UWSA, SSPP, and NDA. Of course, they are very close with the base in the China border and also close with the Chinese government. So KNU, they are one of the first group that condemned the military coup, and they have been daily clashes in their area, especially in Breakage 5 and Breakage 3 area. And there have been the military responded with multiple airstrike and ground attack toward the KNU base in the Karen state. And RCSS, they have been very vocal. They were the acting leader of the PPSD for the past 2 years, but they recently resigned from their position. And now NMSB Moon and other two members become a leader of the PPSD. So they've been vocal, but there is not much clashes between RCSS and the military in the recently. Most of the conflicts are fighting with RCSS conducting is with the other armed groups like TNLA and SSPP for over the territorial disputes in the Shan state. And likewise, there has been no report of armed clashes between the military and other PPSD members since the coup. And PPSD have been the position of the PPSD is very clear that there is neither strong political or military coherence among the members. And some of the group, they even attended the Armed Force Day ceremony, which on the March 27 after the coup. And some of the group have a separate meeting with the military, met the military representative. But on the other hand, there is some people close tied to the CNF, ABSDF, or NMSB, they involved in the NUG government. For example, like Dr. Liam Muzakong, who will be a speaker, he became the Minister of Federal Affairs in the NUG government. And now he is also the Vice President of the CNF. And the federal political negotiation, FPNCC is more vague after the coup because you can see some groups are very silent about the coup, but some groups like KIA are fighting every day. And there is also a group like AA, which is also relatively silent on the coup, but they have also joined some fighting in the Kachin state. This is the recent development, like 5 months after the military coup. So we see some changes of the opposition. Now we see after the 5 months, it's become obvious that PTF become a new forces, and CNF have they have a tension with the military in the Chin state and also KNPP. Both of the groups have a very close tie with the PTF, People Defense Force, or CDF, Chin Defense Force in their region, and they grow exponentially after the military coups. And RCSS, there's some report that they try to have a bilateral want to talk with the military. So are we seeing more ceasefire agreement, or what are the likelihood of Federal Army? So ceasefire, as before the coup, NC signatory, they continue to accuse others for violation, but it's certain that none of the signatory will declare the annulment of the historic multilateral ceasefire agreement, which is NCA, which is recognized by international community and Union Parliament. And even after the coup, military has been repeatedly said it will continue with the current NCA-based peace process, but it will not force other EU to sign the NCA, but they will use a bilateral ceasefire agreement or informal ceasefire agreement to ease the pressure on them after the coups. And some signatory, like even KNU leaders, they show their willingness to continue the talk with the military, but these have received a public backlash. intensity of the conflict, we will see the ongoing clashes are more likely to intensify because majority of the group, they are talking with the military. Majority of the group talking with the military are either group that haven't have any clash with the military before the coup, or group that only have a few handful of soldiers. So in addition, military responded by asserting both political and military pressure on pro-NUG armed groups, regardless of their troop strength and relation period to the coup, as evidence in the current state with the attack against the KNU. And moreover, the scale of the military-induced violence is pushing many anti-coup protester urban youth into armed resistance, as evidence in many highland area and urban city, because they have been taking up traditional handing gun, homemade fire gun, and bomb against the military. And we see more strong coherence between the regional PDF and EU, and there have been many joint operations against the military and police force in the past few months. And the Federal Army, how about the likelihood of the Federal Army taken together? So EAO, their position is very contradictory, and their responses to the coup in the past 100 days or 5 months suggest that they are still no longer based on their period coalition or whether they are signatory to the NCA. And it's also obvious that the coup had deepened their disunity. And despite the widespread public expectation that the coup would unite different forces toward the common enemy and enable the formation of the Federal Army. And I think it is also important to mention about the PTF role, because the NUG seem to understand about the contradicting position. So they admit that a Federal Army is a long-term goal. So they said they need a more political dialogue with the EAO. So for to prepare as a Federal Army, they said they will focus on building people defense force. And but the question remains how the NUG will support and mobilize, they coordinate the various township-based PTF scattered across the country. And it's also clear that the effectiveness and support of the PTF is solely depend on the extent to what extent they receive support from the existing EAO. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samuel. We have 3 questions, all short and well put, but that would require very long answers for Samuel. Let me just read through them, and Samuel, you can address them as you see fit. The first one relates to the role of the PDFs in fighting against the Tatmadaw with the EAOs. I suppose the question goes partly to the kinds of relationships that they've been developing. The second is on the status of the NCA, including as a framework for future negotiations. And the third relates to the WA specifically and how we account for the no condemnation and no clashes from the WA. So plenty to work with there. If you could just offer a brief response to all 3 of these questions, and then we'll go to the final points from the room. Thank you.
So the first question about PTF. Yeah, in my presentation, I also explained that the PTF become significant after the coups, which we don't see in 1998 and after the 2007 as well. So we see 2 types of, depending on how they form and how they carry out their activities. So we see 2 different types of PTFs. One's that based in the frontier, in the ethnic area like Chin, Karen, and Garani, and also in Zagai State, they have 100 member, and they have been formed as malicious groups, and they also have a close tie with the existing EAO like CNF, KIA, and also KNPP. So they have a very close tie. So these groups can carry out very attack on the military basis. And there is another group which is also based in Rangoon and Mandalay, like urban city. They are like guerrilla groups. So they are small, but they are also effective attacking against the administrative office and other non-CDM civil servants. So we see that different kind of actor involving the PDF movements. And the main question for the PDF, for both types of PTF, is the main question is that how they will be armed, because some of the reports that they have been 15,000 PDF member have been trained, they get a training, but the question is how they will be arms for the future attacks against the military. And about the NCA, so NCA is, I might say, it's a historic document because it is the first multilateral ceasefire agreement in the country, and it's also the hybrid agreement because it's also have a political agreement like amending the guarantee to amend the constitution. But the problem is not the ceasefire, the agreement itself. The problem is about the trust issue. And another issue after the coup is that a group like KNU and CNF and other groups, they make it clearly that they don't want to resume the dialogue with the military because it is a tripartite agreement with military, EAO, and government. So without the elected government or NLD, they don't want to resume the dialogues. So it is very clear from them. But there is also some of the groups, they want to continue bilateral agreement with the military. But it is also obvious that we won't see Union Peace Conference in the near future. We won't see multilateral agreements in the near future.
Samuel, so thank you very much for those two responses. And the third one, just request you, Luke, to provide a response to that. Type in an answer. We'll leave that open because we're just running.